Welcome back to Up West Sports. My name is Gavin Hite. As you can tell by the boxes behind me, Christmas just happened. But in even better news, we got a fun one for you today. Have you ever wondered what the NIL landscape for the Cougs could look like? Well, today we are going to dive in on what the potential of that breakdown could look like per President Cantwell's call to action, bringing in $5 million towards this issue. It's also worth noting that along with signing Kirby Moore, he has brought along the NIL master from Wazzu, Brad Larrondo. Brad Larrondo helped raise over $31 million in NIL funds for Wazzu. So this is a step in the right direction. Now, with the current state of the NIL and having limited information, it's worth noting that this is a complete guesstimation of how the Cougs could move forward. It's also worth noting that even though $5 million is the goal, that may not be where we ultimately end up, or if $5 million is not just NIL, but in addition to operational budget. Using the $5 million that President Cantwell mentioned, and with the help of Brad Larrondo in this department, I'll go ahead and use this as a parameter to break down the NIL. Let's dive in. So later in this video, you will probably see different definitions pop up of these tiers. I had to go back and go through after I thought about it. These tiers really don't mean how good a player is. Obviously, you're number 5. They're going to be a little bit better. Carson Beck transferring from Georgia to Miami. Yeah, he made a bag, as they call. This really kind of breaks down to market value and how much they are potentially going to make. That doesn't necessarily mean how good they are. We've seen some very, very, very elite players in this 1 or 2 level. That just really means kind of their market value. So I had to go back and establish that before kind of going forward. But as we kind of work through this, yeah, your 5s are probably going to be at the top of the game, or what people think their market value is going to be. 4 kind of in that mid tier or mid to upper tier. 3 being also mid to maybe even mid upper tier. 2 is average to above average. As it pertains to Wazzu, they could find some guys in this range that are also really good, that this is just a good fit for them to go play. And then number 1, this could be your walk-ons. This could be just minimal market value, maybe even guys that are getting no NIL money and just going and proving themselves. And this is my breakdown here. This is what I put together. This is kind of what I have. It may be different for everybody else. This was easiest for me to retain and hopefully spit it back out to you guys. Now, the next thing to kind of dive into is the positional tiers and what that means. There's still limited data on how much guys are getting. Contracts are just not a thing. So I'm going with whatever I can find on the internet and whatever research I can find. So I put together what I deemed as tier 5s all the way down to tier 1, especially as it relates to quarterback here. Your tier 5s are kind of in that 1.5 million plus, and you know, your Carson Becks, who I think have been reported 4 to 6 million. Those are, you know, kind of your elite elites. There's only a handful of those guys. I think most of the elite quarterbacks that we're seeing are in that 1.5 to 2 million range, maybe even a little bit further. If I'm off on that, throw something in the comment. Let me know how wrong I am. But that's kind of from the information that I've gathered. And then as you see, your tier 4s are still very, very, very much good. Quarterback is a premier position. So 1 mil to 1.5 mil, that's kind of in that range. That's kind of what I guesstimated on that. And then your tier 3s are anywhere from 350,000 to 1 million. It's just kind of depending on where you're getting these guys. We did see Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss go from Division 2 to Division 1. I actually don't know how much you end up making, but if you're going from a Division 2 up to that FBS level, or even, you know, SEC level, it's curious. I'm curious on how much they're actually going to get. Could they be on this scale? Are they well above that scale? Was I completely wrong? This was just a guesstimation on where that tier 3 could potentially be, not necessarily talent level. And then for tier 2 and tier 1, we got tier 2 at 100,000 to 350,000, and then 1 is kind of in that sub 1,000 range. Sorry, sub 100,000 range, and could be it could be as low as 0. You could just have somebody who's a walk-on and take $0 and try and go prove themselves. Now, moving on to running backs, I also have them 5 to 1, 5 being in the $500 to $1 million range. Running backs, it's tough evaluating running backs financially, because you look at the draft and there's not a lot of running backs going in the first round. So what does that equate financially? I put that in the $500 to $1 million range because I feel like there's still running backs out there that are going to make really good money. Whether I'm sitting here telling you it's worth it or not, it remains to be unseen, but I still think that's kind of the range that you're looking at. It might even be north of $1 million for some of these guys. Ashton Genty, if he were to go into the portal for a senior year, what would that look like? 4 being in that $350,000 to $500,000 range, 3 being $250,000 to $350,000 range, 2 $100,000 to $250,000, and 1 also being in that sub $100,000. And then for wide receivers, I put 1 million plus. I feel like there's going to be some that are out there that go exponentially beyond that. You're probably going to find, your Travis Hunters who play both sides of the ball. I believe Ryan Williams and a couple other guys are north of 2 million, or in that realm. So I just put 1 million plus. I feel like if you're making north of $1 million, you're probably in the upper echelon of this category. And then for 4, 500,000 to $1 million, 3, 350 to 500,000, 2, 100,000 to 350,000, and then 1 being again sub 100,000. Now tight ends, I feel like you might find some that are out there, like Bramer. I think just jumped in the portal from Iowa State. Shout out Iowa State. He might, end up going to get a good amount of money. I think maybe it's few and far between for this position. So I put 750,000 plus. You might find guys that are, north of $1 million, north of 1.5 million even. But I felt like 750,000 plus was a fair estimate on tight ends, with 4 being 350 to 750K, 3 being 100 to 350K, 2 being 50 to 100,000, and then sub 50K being in that 1 tier. Now, offensive linemen, this is a hot commodity in my opinion. I feel like if you're going to go out and get a good quarterback, you're probably going to want to go out and get a good offensive line, and you can find other pieces however you can find them. However, offensive linemen, I put them in the category of 5 being at 1 million plus, and same thing, you'll probably find guys that are up north of 2 million. 4 being 750 to 1 million, 3 being 350 to 750K, and then 2 being 100 to 350K, and 1 being sub 100,000. Now it's worth noting, I did do the same thing for defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. They're all kind of in that same category as offensive linemen. I feel like if you're going to be a really good D-back, if you're going to be a really good linebacker, if you're a really good D-end, you're probably going to make in that, $1 to $2 million range, and tiered off, kind of going accordingly. So how does this pertain to Washington State? How can we break this down with the potential $5 million that we have? How can we roster construct this team moving forward? Who's coming back? What does that look like? For the quarterbacks, I put in, we're looking for kind of that tier 4. Now, we don't need a tier 4. I think you can get away with a solid tier 3 or maybe even a tier 2, depending on how you look at it, depending on where you're looking to get that quarterback. However, I've seen Bo Perbula very close knitted with Kirby Moore. There's a chance that you go get him. What does his dollar amount look like? I wish I could sit here and tell you the correct amount. I put a guesstimation of his number in that tier 4 category. For quarterbacks, you're looking for 1 to 1.5 million. I put right in the middle at 1.25, and that's kind of what I got for our starting quarterback, or what we're looking at. It's also worth noting on that end, what is Julian Duggar's role? Is he coming back? Does Kirby Moore like his game? Obviously, you got to see him in the Boise, Idaho Potato Bowl. Very curious on what his thoughts are at the quarterback position, because he does love the run game. So Julian Duggar could be the guy moving forward, and maybe they can kind of work with his passing game a little bit better and make him really a dual threat. Now, I put for the backup quarterback, you're probably leaning on a little bit of experience at somewhere. Could be your Zevi Eckhouse. Maybe you go get an FCS guy that did well, but maybe not super well. So you're trying to save a little bit of money right there. So I put in kind of that, $50,000 tier 1, kind of in, you can maybe bump that up to a tier 2, and you're looking between 100 to 350,000. Maybe it is Julian Duggar as your number 2, and you give him a couple bucks. I don't know what his current NIL situation is. Could be just that. Now, moving on to your running backs. This is another complete guess. I'm assuming that you're going to try your absolute best to get Maxwell Woods and Leo Puliwasi back. So I put 2 running backs here, and here's what I have for them. I have them listed at tier 2, tier 1. I think you can maybe make the case to give Maxwell Woods, probably the 150,000, because I think being younger, getting more years out of them, you're going to try and maybe give them a few extra bucks more so than anybody else. So that puts you at 150,000, with your second tier running back at right around 50,000. Again, I could be completely off on these guesstimations. These are, again, don't rake me over the coals. Just let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, what you think these guys are going to get if they were to go test the free agency of NIL. Here's what I thought maybe you can get away with, and you can say, hey, here, you know exactly our budget. We got $5 million to spend. Here's how we're trying to roster construct, and you can get away with maybe some hometown discount there with the right coaches. So it's tough to really navigate that specific part with retaining guys. But I put for this exercise and for my projections, I put in, maybe right around $50,000 in the tier one. Again, this does not mean how good or bad they necessarily are. It's if you were to go get somebody in the transfer portal, maybe they were a tier one because they didn't play very well. They didn't have statistical data, but because they're homegrown, tier one really just means how much they're getting in that portal, or in NIL. Then for your wide receivers, I think for this one, you need to try your best to go get some top tier wide receivers. This is definitely, a position where you can try and retain. It's worth noting on this end, you got Tony Freeman, who just jumped out into the portal. Maybe this is the guy that you spend the money on because he's worth it, in my opinion. He's worth absolutely tier 3, tier 4 for me. I would put him right here at tier 4. This would be Tony Freeman for me. Go get him back and spend about $750,000. I put right kind of like in the middle for we pop down here. Tier 4 is 500,000 to $1 million. I put them kind of right in the middle at 750,000. With your tier 3, I'm trying to go get maybe 2 tier 3 wide receivers. This is one that I'm a little bit more open to. I do have a video coming out after this of where we can maybe potentially save some money on NIL and maybe going to get some underrated or just overlooked guys from different levels. Division 2 and FCS have a plethora of players that are willing to make the jump up, and maybe they're willing to take a little bit less to play at the spot that's going to get them a good, national coverage. And, what does that exactly mean? Are they going to take $50,000? Are they going to take $10,000? Are they really looking for $350,000? Are we competing with the LSUs of the world for some of these Division 2 and Division 3 and even FCS players? I thought they're a little bit of a hidden gem, and I think we might be able to take those guys and get them if they decide to jump in the portal. But yeah, worth noting that I'm going to come out with a video of some underrated players that you definitely need to take a look at that could plug into these spots for even cheaper than what I'm talking here. Getting back into here, this is just roster constructing for two tier 3s and a tier 2 being around $120,000. And beyond that, I think you're just trying to find guys that are willing to play football at this level. I think there's a lot of guys out there that aren't making very much, if no NIL money, and they're still really good. So I think beyond these 4 receivers, you could still find some really quality players for close to $0. Now, moving on to our tight ends. Tight ends is in my opinion, maybe Kirby Moore is different. A lot of this is hinging off of how Kirby Moore is going to construct his offense. But I think you can go out and find a quality tight end for roughly $40,000, or a tight end that gets the job done in this offense. And then beyond that, I think you could find another tight end that's looking for close to $0. I think you can find that out there in this current state of NIL. And then moving on to our offensive linemen, this is a position, if you're going to go get a guy like Bo Prabula, you do want to make sure that he is stacked with players. You want to make sure he has a good offensive line around him. So just with our budget of $5 million, I put in 2 3-tier guys, 2 2-tier guys, and then 2 1-tier guys. Now, with these 1-tier guys, these could be in-house. 2-tier guys, this could also be in-house. 3-tier guys, I think you need to go outside the box. You need to find somebody in the portal. Go do that as well. There's also, there's offensive linemen out there worth noting at Harding University. Some of these D2s that I wasn't able to find specific stats on offensive linemen, but I was able to see that some of these schools are not letting up more than 8 or 9 sacks in a year. And so that has to mean that they have good offensive linemen. I wish I can tell you that I can break down footage and be able to tell you which offensive lineman is going to be really good. Unfortunately, that's not my expertise. I'm more on the quarterbacks, wide receivers, running back side. Now, as we move on to the defensive side of the ball, this is where we definitely want to either retain some guys or find some hidden gems. I think you can find some really, really good ones at the FCS level and Division II level that are going to come up and be absolute dudes at this level. But I think for that first tier, your best player should be a tier 2 or above, and you try and allocate maybe some of that money towards getting a good defensive lineman. Beyond that, you're looking for kind of hidden gems. You're looking for as many players that are looking to take, this is $80,000, this is $50,000, and this is $25,000, and then maybe even getting a couple guys that aren't getting any NIL money. And moving on to our linebacker situation, Anthony Polano has to be at the top of everybody's list, trying to get him retained. He's going to be extremely, extremely, extremely difficult. I mean, he committed to South Dakota State, to Jimmy Rogers, and then moved to Wazzu. He's in the transfer portal. He did play in the game. You'd like to see him stay. It's going to be tough. It's going to be extremely tough to take him away from Iowa State. I just don't think you have the capital in NIL funds to retain him. However, I put $150,000 ish. This is one where you can maybe supplement from another position. Maybe instead of getting, 3 wide receivers that are $350,000 plus, maybe getting 1 or 2 and allocating some of that money down here towards trying to get Anthony Polano retained. Beyond that, I think you can find a really good linebacker that's willing to take no money, or just a guy that you've already got coming in on your roster that's not already on NIL, and then a guy for roughly $20,000. Again, this give and take on some of this. You might have to bump this $20,000 up to $50,000 and take it from somewhere else. And then for our D-backs, same situation. We're looking for one guy that's a standout, and then the other guys hit or miss. They're all kind of under 100,000. Still, give or take, you can take a little bit from the wide receiver money and get a second tier, 2 second tier guys, and make it above $100,000 there. I think you can find a good roster with all that. So actually, with all that being said and done, here's kind of how it breaks down. If we add everything up together, we're sitting at 4.95, and that's exactly how much it is. And that's why I put it in this kind of decimalage, is to be able to get it here. And decimalage may not be a word. I just made it up. If I didn't make it up, congrats to the person that did make it up. But yeah, for this podcast, we're gonna let that one bang. Go ahead and roast me in the comments. Feeling that one coming. But $4.95 million, this is kind of where we're sitting at with all of this. I left $50,000 kind of to spare. This could go towards a kicker. This could go towards an all-purpose guy, a special teams guy, or maybe we're not using the full $5 million and we're just seeing how much we have. But otherwise, this does get us to fairly close with our full NIL budget of $5 million. Thank you for watching the video on this NIL breakdown. Again, these are just some rough numbers I brought together based on the research that I could provide. Obviously, there's going to be outliers well above those numbers that I projected. I think within the confines of Wazzu and what you can bring into Wazzu, I think those are fairly close. I think you're looking to spend a little bit more on certain areas. Either way, I want to know your thoughts. I want to know, what do you think we can bring in? What does it look like? We got January 2nd coming right around the corner, and they got to start making promises soon. So I'm very curious on your guys' thoughts, and I'm very excited for this new Kirby Moore era and to be with $5 million or potentially with $5 million. For Up West Sports, I'm Gavin Hite. Thank you for watching.